Hi, you're watching Geeks Assemble.
Hello, and we are Geeks Assembled. Me and Susan are gathered here on this little cast. This came about because of Madam over there pointed out on my favourite albums of the 1980s videos I've been making. I haven't included a certain group.
And that was a bad idea.
Well,
so here we are rectifying that situation.
Yes, I promised on a cast maybe a month ago that me and Susan would get together and discuss a certain album by this group. Because in that other cast we did discuss quite a bit about other albums and the group, but we sort of missed out this period. So we are going to talk about the third studio album by Culture Club, lead singer of course Boy George, which was called Waking Up with the House on Fire, which was released in 1984. Was this the beginning of the end for the group? We will find out this discussion because every group has their popularity does dwindle after a while. They had success at the beginning of the 80s, mid-80s, to be clever and Columbine on the very, very big hits. For me talking, we'll go across the pond to a Culture Club aficionado. Can you just give us a brief history of Culture Club?
Yes, Culture Club started in '81. It grew out of, Malcolm McLaren connected Boy George to Mikey Craig, and when Mikey Craig was opening for, for Bow Wow Wow and Malcolm McLaren in one gig, and Boy George was there, having been recruited to sort of push Annabella Lewin, and so she didn't like that. But anyway, Mikey Craig liked Boy George, and he liked his attitude, and he liked his kind of stuff, and so so he was sort of caught up in the new romantic movement, and it was all about like dressing up and going out and doing really fun club crawl and this group started in London, and Roy Hay joined shortly thereafter, and then they had a drummer that they like peeled out of the group The Damned, and who had done stuff with the Clash at this in a similar time frame, sort of parallel, and this was John Moss, and so there we are. And at first they were called the Sex Game Children, and then they were called Culture Club because it's easier to go with a multicultural theme when you've got a multicultural group of people. John being Jewish, George being Irish Catholic, Mikey Craig being Black and Islander, and Roy Hay being sort of suburban. Anyway, like there was just a mix there, and so they called themselves Culture Club. Their first album was Kissing to Be Clever. It had a couple of #1 songs in it, and then their second album, Color by Numbers, had like 10, 5, I don't know, anyway, a lot of #1 songs. And he got into a rhythm of, you know, how to write music, and he'd write, you know, 2-verse bridge, or verse bridge, and then like whatever the middle part is, and then another with either a drum solo or guitar solo, or, you know, a funk down with the bass in the middle, and then into the verse and chorus again. And so, you know, it was just a really simple, catchy way of writing songs. And this is the third album, and as you can tell, it's written there. The songs are written the same way as they'd written for 2 other albums, but they were trying different things with this. They were trying to pull away from that, you know, that pop thing that they were doing. But, you know, they had made so much, and they had so much exposure with that pop thing, that instead of this being sort of a really, really amazing thing, it was like kind of it was the things that they tried. I gotta give them credit for it, but the other stuff just kind of was like, whoa. Anyway.
Yeah. I'll have to admit here, I'm not a big Culture Club fan. I don't mind the songs. I mean, I won't turn the radio off if the songs come, because they do, as you say, the catchy pop song. They were big hits back in the day, but I was never a big follower of Culture Club. I knew they existed, but I was more into my Bowie.
So in fact, was Boy George into Bowie?
Yeah,
I mean,
well, yes,
literally, like his whole fandom. Boy George was a fan of David Bowie.
Oh yeah. But as I say, I was more following into those. I mean, I knew Culture Club existed at the time, and I'd say there was always on the radio. You know, if they released a new single, it was always in the top 5, or it was at #1. I mean, they had 2 #1s in the UK. I don't know how many they had in America, where you are, but you know, there was hit after hit after hit, and then come down to
their hits were Do You Really Want to Hurt Me? I'll Tumble For You. Then in the second album, they had Karma Chameleon, Church of the Poison Mind, Miss Me Blind, It's a Miracle, and Victims. Victims was huge in the UK.
Oh yeah.
But it didn't really. It kind of, because it was sort of ballady, and the US was just coming out of, you know, Journey and those guys who wrote ballads, who really wrote ballads. Victims didn't, just kind of like it was too fluffy for Americans.
Yeah, true. I mean, they said, and then say come 1984, they had a sort of a break in the summertime, and then they sort of released the first single off this album, The War Song. A catchy pop tune. It was a big hit in the UK, got to #2. But for me, when it first came out, I thought, yeah, they're jumping on the bandwagon, because in the UK, we had another band who was had 9 weeks at #1, Anti-War. I don't know if you've heard of Frankie Goes to Hollywood, with 2 tracks.
Oh yes.
Yes, I mean this.
Ollie Johnson and crew were huge at that point.
Yeah, I mean, said that they had 9 weeks at the moment, 2 tracks, and this was '84 in the UK, and then say Culture Club came back in the October of '84 with The War Song. But are they just sort of, you know, riding the tails of Frankie Goes to Hollywood with this sort of anti-war theme? But
the difference was between the Frankie Goes to Hollywood, 2 Tribes, and The War Song, which which was cheesier by far than. But the reason it was different was that Frankie Goes to Hollywood was all like this is not for kids. This is
True.
sex. This
Yeah,
is
yeah.
hardcore sex. These are two. I mean, in their video, they had the two world leaders wrestling. You know, in other words, kind of snogging each other or whatever. I mean, there was there was sex, but there were clothes were on, so it was more the other way. But
Mhm.
the war song was about kids. It was you know, it was like the other song that was popular at the time. Do the Russians love their children too? And I don't remember who sang that one.
Yeah, Sting.
Sting, right? So they were like, Culture Club was trying to ride that because the background singers were all kids in that song. Do you remember? I mean, it was just it was sort of like school chants, right? Like those, you know, going to private school, you chant down all the time, and I don't know.
Yeah. It's just, I mean, the kids said they released the album with the title of "Waking Up with the House on Fire." The cover of that, you know, brightly coloured, bright red hair, as the Boy George. You know, you couldn't miss that cover record. Yeah, it has gone down as it wasn't a big hit. This album, it only sold 5 million copies worldwide, and in any record producing group, that was a major flop. To be honest, only 5 million record back then. But some of the songs on it are okay. You know, they have some good tunes on there. But we will delve into the songs. I've listened to the album this week. Good old Spotify. So the first track. What do you make of Dangerous Man, Susan?
Okay, Dangerous Man was a bit like, it was a bit like a little bit more adult than the second song, but it was about the song seemed to be about drugs, and you know, the drug dealer being the most suave, coolest guy in the room and everything, and yeah. So, and then there was a sort of a weird synthy guitar solo, or maybe it was that guitar that he played like a synth. I don't know. Anyway, that was cool. Go on.
You say, you know what I mean? This for an album opener, this track, it just didn't do nothing for me. It was for me, it was an album, Dangerous Man. It didn't, because for the first track of an album, you need to be grabbed. You know, the music needs to grab you, and this one just for me didn't do it. It was a bit lost. I agree with what you said. Was possibly about. Yeah, I got all that, but it was just didn't. There was no spark there for me. I don't know how you feel about that.
Well, you know, it wasn't the strongest track on the album.
Yeah, as I say,
maybe they could have, because they did open with Karma Chameleon and on one side, and then Church of the Poison Mind on the other side of Color by Numbers.
I mean,
I guess that would have been like the better thing to do, was open with what they were going to release first as a single. Maybe the producer was just like, throw them at a wall and see what order they show up.
Yeah, see what sticks.
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah, I think really they should have opened the album should have opened with the War Song.
Yeah, either that or what was the other one? The other one was The Dive.
Oh yeah, The Dive. Yeah.
The Dive would have been really good to open with, but anyway.
Yeah. So yeah, that was for the opening track, "Dangerous Man." We've already mentioned the war song. I don't think we really need to go further into that one.
Except for I'd like to talk about the gospel singers. I mean, they
No, actually, I know for a fact. The first album, the second album, and this album had going for the gospel singing. Helen Terry was on with Culture Club.
Yeah.
For the thing, back in. I know she was on this album.
She was.
To me, but she her voice lost for me on this album. With all the other.
Because they mixed her with a bunch of other ladies.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that wasn't really fair.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's probably why shortly after this one she was gone.
Which is a shame. I'd love to know what Helen Terry's doing now. I'll have to Google that.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're going about the gospel singing, Susan.
So yeah, there was Helen Terry, as you said. There was like Imogene Exton, Alice Kemp, Adriana Lazu, Alana Marchant, Nancy Peppers, and then there was Tara Thomas and Claire Torrey were some of them, and then there were some male backup singers as well. So I mean, it was just like, I mean, in this one, in the war song, it was obviously Helen, but the other ones, they mixed her out with a bunch of other ladies. So yeah, I just wanted to mention that because eventually he goes back to singing like "God Thank You, Woman," and a lot of the fans, well, I'll just say it. I'll use I and me statements. I always thought that was referring to his mom and Helen and his sisters. But, I could be.
You could be. But thanks for mentioning the gospel sing, because if you hadn't mentioned that, I would have forgotten about mentioning Helen Terry. Thank you, Susan. And we'll move on to the track 3, Unfortunate Thing. For me, this could have been this was a single material thing. This could have been a single, Unfortunate Thing. I love the horns and the drums on this.
Mm-hmm.
It's very, very catchy. I don't know why they didn't release this as a single. Should have done, in my opinion. But now you always get an album and you think, wow, that's going to be a single, and they never release it. Why? But Unfortunate Thing. What's your take on that one?
Well, I liked it. I thought that it was pretty standard for Culture Club. It had a lot of cool like riffing but it wasn't like the chant down like the rest of this album seemed to be. But yeah, the horns were Kenneth McGregor and Ron Williams, and of course John Moss meeting them on the same page with the drums, and so that was really amazing. And there was a little solo drum thing in there, which actually was one of the only times that happened in all of Culture Club songs, because they didn't really let John go free and play unless he was in concert. There was a couple times in concert.
The constant thing about Culture Club, apart from Boy George's voice, was John Moss's drumming. It is true to say that any group, most groups, you could tell who's drumming. If it's Roger Taylor or Queen, you know it's Roger Taylor. This goes the same for Culture Club, because John Moss has a certain sound. And first album, second album, this album, the third album, it's John Moss straight away. I don't know how to do it.
Sorry, the first album he went from one drum
Yeah.
usually using the snare, and then he like got the whole set, and then this one he was like,
Yeah.
this one they let him play.
Yeah, he's got his own sound, and you know his sound straight away. Like, oh, it's John Moss. Oh, you know, well, yeah. So that's an unfortunate thing. And then we come to track track 4, Cram Town. Let's have a look. What have I written down here? Boy George sort of does an R&B old rock and roll style song, which it's quite catchy, and it's a bit different from what we're used to with Culture Club. And it's an enjoyable song, but for me, with the whole album, it seemed a bit out of place. I don't know if you thought that.
It was interesting. It was a complete. This was one of those ones that they tried something new. They tried the Teddy Boy rockabilly sound, and because Boy George had been a Teddy Boy, as you know, in the past, and so he had it in him, and this one like had all the street crime, you know, who killed who and everything, and it was sort of like it was. I mean, and they mentioned Fats Walla in the, which was fun, and then they, the lyrics were sort of pulled out of the 50s with a
Yeah, I got that vibe. That's what I thought. Yeah, I got the 50s vibe, rock and roll. You know, it is a good song, but I mean, every group does experiment, and that track is an experiment on this album, because for me, the only track on this album what is not typical Culture Club.
Well, there is another one coming up too.
Oh well, okay, yeah. Well, this one stood out. This one stood out for me. Right, well, we go track number 5, Mistake number 3, which was the 3rd single off the album.
And that one should have been second single, at least.
Yeah, this it didn't even chart in the UK, which is a shame.
It charted in America, and MTV played it a lot.
Yeah, I think
the people hanging from like trapezes and things.
Oh yes.
Lots of glue.
Go out and buy the DVD of all the videos and find it on there. But it is a good song. It's Culture Club written all over it. It's a lovely song. I just don't understand why it never ever charted in the UK. I don't know if it didn't get any radio play or anything like that. I don't know. But you've got anything else to say on the Mistake number 3?
Yeah, that was flanged. I mean, like anymore, everybody uses auto-tune, and so everybody's voice sounds pretty similar, but this one was Boy George's voice flanged. The whole band, they used that flange so much in this song. I mean, yes, it was a ballad. Yes, it was slow. Yes, it was sweet.
Yeah.
I mean, talking about like the person, you know, that you love and doing something, you know, dreadful with them that got you hooked on them or something. Anyway, but they affected it so much. It was flange. It was like, I was just like, whoa, remembering that, and like remembering how weird that was when I first heard it. I was like, yes.
Yeah, Culture Club. Then we'll move on to the next track, which was The Dive.
Yeah.
This another one. This is just. This could have been a single.
Yeah.
It's got that summery feel about this song.
Yeah.
It's a feel-good song.
Yeah,
Uh,
I'd
um,
dive into your
and it
blue
did
eyes.
have
I
the
mean,
old
come on.
country sound. Yeah, I did enjoy the Dab. And as I said, I think it should have been a single, but not to be. Um, what's your take on them?
Beautiful calypso, beautiful island feel. Obviously, inspired heavily by Mikey and his upbringing and his parents and stuff. And you know, the love song lyrics, sweet songs.
Yeah,
Um,
it is a very
and
good song.
and not really affected and pretty. I mean, whereas first two albums were pretty much like third generation, fourth generation reggae sort of sound.
Yeah, well, yeah, true.
This one was calypso, so it was a little departure, and it wasn't. It was like straight calypso. It wasn't sort of. Uh, they didn't turn it into a pop song, but it was really good. I enjoyed it a lot. And I agree. I think that this one should have been the first song on the album.
Yeah,
Had I had, my say or whatever, I would have put it at
yeah, that could have been moved up to track number one.
yes.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah. Then we move on to now. I've, the Medal song was the second single off the album in the UK. It only reached about number 33 in the UK. It's a catchy song. I don't mind it. It's not a bad song. I still don't know why it's called the Medal song.
Because the chorus goes, some go east, some go west. Will I wear a medal to something?
Right.
And so, I mean, it was talking. The regular lyrics were talking about his fandom. I mean, kind of, you know, the not his not his not the fans of him, but his fandom of people like Bowie and people like,
yeah. So there's people
Mark
he looks up
Bowen
to.
and all of his Lee
Icons.
Bowery. I mean, it was like if I follow these people to the east, to the west, if I chase them down, will I get a medal for doing that? Because at the end of the day, I'm just a normal guy who's really into Bowie and really into
Same here. I am.
Lee Bowery, which is fun. Anyway, that's
Yeah, I mean, it is a catchy. I say it was the second single. Should it have been single? Debatable.
yeah.
It's a. It's. I mean, I can't diss the song.
Yeah.
As I said, this was their first single to really be classed as what would term as a flop, because they say it just didn't reach the heights what they wanted it to. It got loads of airplay when it was released, but just never climbed the charts for some reason. But that's what happens in the pop career of certain groups. Right, what's the next one? What's the next track?
Don't want to talk about it.
That was a single, but that was only released in Mexico, apparently. Just a single released in Mexico. But what a funky bass on that.
Yeah.
And
then there was a guitar solo in the middle.
Oh, yeah. And this is what always gets me about albums. You think, brilliant song. Why is that song only released in a certain country? Why the global world just release the song and go around the world, but only released in Mexico. Who? I don't know the reason
Viva
behind
Mexico.
these things. Mexico. But,
I want to talk about it, but I'll send it to Mexico.
Mexico, yeah. You got any say on that? Any more? Got to talk
No,
about it?
I just love the guitar solo on that.
Yeah. So the next track then is Mannequin.
And who does that sound like? Who do
Right.
you put Mannequin in you set it by itself and don't think about any of the other songs around it. What does that one sound like?
Well, so I'll say what I've written down. And I'll notes as I listen to it. And I put here, just squiggled right in. I like the horns. Yeah, I always like the horns. Doo-wop. Sort of like harmonies like Beach Boys.
Okay, I can see that. But you know who was trying also for those harmonies at the same time? Wham! I mean, Mannequin was like Wham! It was. I thought, my gosh, he's just trying to do a George Michael song. I mean,
and there were big rivals at the time, wasn't there?
they were. I mean, and here he is, but he didn't. The magic wasn't on Mannequin. It was on Wake Me Up Before You Go Go, and it just. I just thought, my gosh, the song's just like Wham.
But I suppose that's
you're right.
Yeah. The harmonies in it are brilliant. But if they're trying to sound like another group, don't say it's a rip-off. Just say it's a nod to that group. Say it's an all right song. But as you say, it's Wham written all over it. Oh dear! I wonder if he did it on purpose. Or down and when.
I think it was on purpose.
That sounds like that. Yeah, maybe so. I don't. But it's not a dig at Wham. Definitely not a dig.
No.
And then the next.
Those beautiful horns.
Yeah.
You're right. You're absolutely right about that.
I love the horns. Anything with harmony in it as well is just brilliant. So next song, Hello Goodbye. Now, I'd heard this song before, and I thought, Hello Goodbye. I hope it's not a cover version of the Beatles' Hello Goodbye, but it wasn't. It wasn't. This is a bit more rockier. For me, it just didn't feel like Culture Club. I don't know if you think the same.
Well, okay, like whenever there was the screaming guitar sort of thing, the heavy metal guitar, they tried for a very butt rock metal sound, but then they instead of continuing on in that very same genre for the bridge, they came back. They pulled it back to the Culture Club sound. The four instrumentation and and he took off the distortion off the guitar and went back to his the normal Culture Club song. So I thought it was like, why even do it that way? Why not just write it?
Yeah,
stay all the way metal, because they could have done that. I don't know.
It felt like two songs sort of spliced together, and it just didn't work. You had the rock side, and then you had the Culture Club normality side.
Yeah.
And they tried to splice it, and it just didn't work for me.
Yeah.
I mean, every group's an experimental album, and this, Waking Up a House on Fire, is Culture Club's experimental album.
Yeah, it's got a lot of experiments in it. I mean, this heavy metal.
Some things work. Yeah, some things work. Some things don't work.
Yeah.
That Hello Goodbye for me, just I don't know, just didn't do it for me at all.
This heavy metal thing, I don't know if Boy George could ever sing it, so I think that they had to pull back so that you know, any of the, because he wrote some tough boy lyrics, some rude boy sort of lyrics, and it was before he went punk with the Twin and stuff, or after he went punk in the 80s, or in the 70s, but came back to it later. But I mean, this had the chants that were kind of like all the way through this album. There was all these songs with chanting going on. And I mean, I know that was somewhat what was going on in the UK at the time. It's all these chantings, but
there's plenty of songs back in the mid-80s with all the chants. And, there's all the songs what sound good,
and then there was Roy Hay doing his guitar solo, and he could actually, you know, jump genres. I mean, he had the talent. He has the talent to this day to move from disco to funk to
reggae,
beautiful melodic
rock
stuff to heavy metal. But I mean, I don't know why they pulled it back. I mean, John had been in the Jam and in the Clash, and so I mean, he had the chops to play that, but they went and then they pull back and then they go and then they pull back, and then there was a guitar solo.
It's just, I don't know, that one just didn't work for me. I mean, that 10 tracks there, what we just talked about, was the 10 tracks on the official release of the album. It was reissued in 2003 with 4 extra tracks. And I don't know if you've listened to the 4 extra tracks.
I think I listened to one of them. What was it?
Yeah, well, the next 4 tracks was it La Gauchon de Guerra, which I think is Spanish for the war song.
Oh, so that's the war song in Spanish.
Yeah. I mean, it had the English singing, but it also had the chants in Spanish. I think it was Spanish. I think that was the B-side to the war song, so they included that as an extra track on the reissue. Then you had the track Love is Love.
Oh, yeah, but that was released later.
Yes, that was from the soundtrack to the film Electric Dreams.
Yeah.
Which was a single in Canada, Japan, and it was their biggest hit. Love is Love was their biggest hit in Brazil.
Oh.
Yeah. And then the next extra track you got is The Dream, which was also on Electric Dreams.
Yeah,
soundtrack.
Okay, so I remember those. And I remember Electric Dreams. I you know, it was a cool 80s movie about a computer falling in love with a girl and competing with the computer's owner in trying to woo the heart of this woman, and the name came from Philip K. Dick, To Android's Dream.
Yeah.
I mean,
but for a group, for a soundtrack, and for a group to be included in the soundtrack is fine, but for 2 songs to be included in the soundtrack, you're happy.
Yeah.
You know, to have The Dream and Love is Love included in the soundtrack. I mean, I know Love is Love was released as a single in 1985, but it's never on a culture club album. Good songs, very good songs. And then the last extra track on the reissue was Don't Go Down That Street.
Oh, yeah, Don't Go Down That Street was on the B-side of what was it?
Metal Song.
The Metal Song,
yeah.
And that was...
But that was released as a single on its own, Don't Go Down That Street, in Japan.
Oh, cool.
It's that the Go Down Your Street was just a fun little poppy song with Japanese intermissions halfway through the song. So maybe that's what Japan, of course. but they were very big in Japan. Uh, uh,
Oh, heck yeah.
oh yes, I've seen footage where they've been chased down the street.
Yeah.
It was like Beatlemania all over again.
I think that it started with Miss Me Blind, where the whole song was done geisha style.
Yeah.
In the video, and suddenly everybody in Japan wanted to be Boy George. Fantastic stuff.
Well, you see, that's what I never felt the urge to be Boy George.
Oh, I did.
Not like Susan. I think she has that urge, and I'm sure she dresses once a month. Just to
So you mentioned these 4 tracks were on the release that came out with the CD, and
yeah.
the CD came out in 2003.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what was cool about that was that the very next year I met him. I met Boy George in Denver, Colorado.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, you've just pulled a beef, Dad.
I did. I did right there.
Hold on a minute. Let's just pick that name up.
Yeah, I met Boy George in out back behind a nightclub in Denver called the Vinyl Nightclub, and he had been DJing that night. He was phenomenal. He played some of his Jesus Loves You stuff and some of his what is it called? Dark Globe stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And he did. I mean, he was really an amazing electro sort of house DJ. He was great. It was fun.
Admittedly, he is on top of his phone. I've never expected him to turn his hand to DJing. Back in the day, you wouldn't have thought that, would you?
Well, I mean, he and Jeremy Healy from Hazy Fantasia.
Yeah, Healy's famous from Hazy Fantasia, yes.
Yeah, they were both DJs at the nightclubs Heaven and the Blitz. I mean, they were both Blitz kids, and they DJ'd at that club, and then
DJing back then is totally different to what DJing is now. Superstar DJ these days.
Yeah.
So what was he like then to me?
He was really pleasant, really sort of down to earth, very, very cool. I was completely overwhelmed by the whole experience, but I mean, there was just he was graceful. It was fun. The man he was with for the day wasn't pleased with me, but I don't know if that was a long-term deal or whatever, but could have been for the night. But I mean, I really I was amazed by how cool and approachable he is. He's fantastic as a human being.
Yeah, I mean, I've never met the guy, but in interviews I see on TV or videos, he always comes across as a well-spoken, quite intelligent. He's very intelligent guy. He knows what he wants and he knows what he's talking about. He takes no bull, as far as I know, but he also comes across as a fun guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he has always come across as a very intelligent man.
Yeah,
he knows what he's doing. Apart from the drug-addled days of the mid-80s,
right? But he was I mean, he's also so rebellious. I mean, that night he took off and they went to a late night tattoo parlor, and he had the Star of David tattooed on the top of his head. I mean, he was out there. I mean, but in terms of conversation, graceful, down to earth, really, really approachable, really, really conversant. We talked about his stuff in the Nevada desert and some of his other, you know, crazy DJ gigs that were going on at the time. And well, at that point, I mean, I just wanted him to remember me, so I gave him a pink Bible with his name on it. I you know, yeah, it was just kind of that was the best gift I could think of, and his name was in Boston.
Historic, Susan.
Yeah, it was kind of fun. Anyway,
we'll have to see if he ever watches this video. You never know.
never know.
I say we always. Well, you know, he's on Twitter, and I always put a link to our videos on Twitter, and I'll also put his name on the link, so you might see it.
Yep, he might.
So that's,
in that case,
let
me just honor the biggest fan, the woman who really made that happen for me, who really allowed me, you know, access to him in a really sort of amazing way, and that was Christine Holland. She went back and forth to the UK from her home in New York to see his Taboo musical 100 times.
Oh,
I know. I mean, I really thought of her as his biggest fan because literally, you know, she knew every gig. She followed him around the United States. She was just there for him all the time. Amazing woman. So let me just give her a plug too, because
yeah, you've done it.
thanks.
But this album, the album Waking Up with a House on Fire. We started the cast. I started the cast. I say the start of popularity balloon deflated for Culture Club. I think it was. I mean, because they took a year off. In 1985 was a quiet year for them. Took a year off, and so they came back with the 1986 album with the
From Luxury Type.
Yeah. Which was a top 10 hit, but still wasn't selling well. They had a couple of hits off it in the UK, but after that, Culture Club dispersed, only to reappear again in the late 90s. You know, touring and that lot, and releasing a new album. I think it was Don't Mind If I Do. I think it was called, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. And they're still touring today.
Yeah.
But and that is where the groups of that era of the 80s are big now. They're constantly touring. Culture Club, Duran Duran, Simple Minds, all those sort of groups are touring still and please fans of them. Because in my honest opinion, the radio or MTV, MTV don't play the music anymore, music channels on TV give any of these guys any time of day. And that's the big injustice about radio in the UK. I don't know if it's the same in America. They just do not play these guys anymore. It is the music of today. The music of today just doesn't touch these guys.
No.
And you've got to give guys a big thumb to laugh this long and still please the fans when they go touring.
Yeah.
Because you know what you're going to get. You're going to get the biggest party. You're going to get, and maybe you'll get some new material. Hopefully, if they ever sit down and write some more songs. But that's what these groups do now. They keep us old timers happy.
And they do their other things. They do their DJing and they do their other.
They've got their other day jobs.
I mean, like what? John Taylor from Duran Duran, isn't he an artist or something?
Yeah, but also you've got to remember as well, that they're, you know, when they started out, they was in their early 20s. Now they've grown up. They've got families. You know, they've got families. You know, they look after the families and do other old jobs as well. But it's good for them to put their, what do you call it, their pop star clothes back on, shall we say, put the makeup back on, and get back on that stage, because the public out there want this sort of thing, demand it, don't they? They want nostalgia.
Yeah.
They want the hits, because that's the songs there. You can hear every word. You can hear that. You can sing along to them. A good time for these songs, and that's the good thing about this music.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah. So, think. Shall we give this album a score? You
No.
think?
No,
No, you don't want to score the album. You don't.
we don't. We don't want to. We don't want to
So
score.
we just
We don't want to score anything. I mean, I'm just glad that we got to talk about it.
yeah. All I can say is it's well, it's from the first two albums. It's not on par with the first two albums, but
No.
this is the experimental album.
Yeah, it's like Ziggy Stardust was in David Bowie's releases, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's every group has to experiment at some point with their sound and the material they put out, and culture must have thought at the time.
Hey, we can go metal and rockabilly and calypso on the same album.
Yeah. And the saying is, you learn by your mistakes.
All right, I agree.
I think that's all we can really say. I've got to say I've enjoyed this talk, going back to the mid-80s, talking all things Culture Club. It's all your fault, Susan.
We could review other ones of their albums too at the later date, just because it's so much fun.
Yeah, we will. Yeah, we will. We'll pick a random album, and we'll sit down, me and Susan, together and talk about another album from years gone by.
Cool.
But as yet, we've decided which band singer album it will be. We don't know, but we will do it. We'll put our heads together and we'll come up with something. So I would just like to thank Susan.
Thank you.
For putting me in this trouble, and I've made amends. I've made a video about Culture.
Well done.
Thank you. And those guys, the one follower we've got, please leave a comment below if you liked what we talked about. Give us even suggest what we could talk about in the future. Give us a thumbs up. Follow us on Twitter. Follow us on Facebook. And if you would like to join any of our movie casts, TV casts, music casts, because I'd love to do a bit more music. I'd love to do more gaming as well. If we get some gamers on as well, because I know that we've got a couple of games in our cast, in our group. We'd like to talk a few games. Please get in touch. So, and on that note, I think we shall say goodbye, farewell, auf Wiedersehen. Until next time.
Hello, goodbye, hello, goodbye, hello,
yes.
hello, goodbye, goodbye.
Oh my God. Bye-bye.